But it also makes it, does it not, much more difficult to tie the groups that we're actually pursuing today back to 9/11, which is what generated the authorization for the use of military force on September the 18th. I think all of you would agree it's very difficult to tie these groups back to that authorization. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you got back to the authorization of military force, what would some of the characteristics be of this one that are different from the one we put in place on September the 18th?
Senator, I would first say that, in my view, the current AUMF is too broad, too narrow, and too vague. It's too broad because, as Jane Harman said, we're now 12 years later, and I think a lot of people, when they voted for it, didn't quite realize that it would still be applying. It's too narrow because, honestly, by the end of my tenure in the U.S. government, you were have to do some shoehorning to get some groups or individuals in there that posed a very clear and imminent threat to the United States into the language of the AUMF. And it's too vague because I think it's very difficult to look at it and say, how would that apply to a group like Jamaat al-Nusra, which the American people in this Congress should know up front. In my view, there should be some process somewhat similar to the designation of terrorist groups that happens through the State Department now, where groups are nominated by the executive branch, they are approved by the executive branch, and there is some period for the U.S. Congress to review whether that group should be included in a new authorization of military force. And I would say that should include groups that pose a near-term threat to the United States through acts of terrorism. Now, that's going to be broader than al-Qaeda affiliates, but it will also give the Congress some opportunity to not necessarily vote, but at least review executive branch determinations of the types of groups that the executive branch thinks should be targeted.
So I think something along the lines of what Mike just described would be perfect. Let me just sort of go up to 30,000 feet for a second. There are a couple of benefits to Congress considering this at this time or any time. First, by looking at possibly revising the AUMF, it'll be a recognition of what I think many of us have known for years, which is this effort against terrorism is a long-term war. It's going to be around for a long time. This is not a threat that's going to go away once we destroy core al-Qaeda. It's going to extend well beyond 9/11 and the years since 9/11. So it would be sort of a national recognition that we need to account for the fact that this is going to be a permanent state of life. Also, as I mentioned in my initial remarks, right now the administration seems to be able to shoehorn their activities into the AUMF, and seems to be what they've done seems to have been covered by the law. But there really is an element of Congress lending legitimacy to their actions when Congress deliberates over the authority that it's considering giving to the executive branch, looks at all the implications of it, vests that authority in the executive branch. I think it's good for all branches, and I think it would be good for our counterterrorism program.
But I do think that, you know, there's almost no thread of tie back to where we were. I think it is time to update this and to create another authorization that's different. And I do think we should take some ownership over this and hopefully drive a little bit different approach to how we deal with this. This is long-term. You're exactly right. There's not going to be a finite end. And I think this whole debate would help invigorate the approach and actually overcome the fatigue that we're talking about. It still is a threat. We still have issues of nation states that we have to deal with, and obviously that's a whole nother component. But this is one that certainly we need to be paying attention to for a long, long time, and I thank you for your testimony.